In today's video, we have several NHL prospects that have signed contracts, plus we also have some offseason rumors concerning the Detroit Red Wings and the Vancouver Canucks, plus we also have some more talk and more updates about a potential summer NHL return. We'll get into all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of things to discuss today. Let's kick things off with the latest on the NHL possibly returning, and the latest news from Pierre LeBrun, who's reporting now that the NHL may be willing to push back the next year, as in 2020-2021 season, as late as like December or January start in order to complete the 1920 season. Talk is maybe if they have to wait until July or August to get games started, that they very well could play, maybe July, August, September, October, take a month off, 4 to 6 weeks break in order to do a draft, free agency, and all that stuff, and obviously get started later. Obviously, they want to salvage the season as much as possible. There's about $500 million in revenue on the line they could stand to lose if they're not able to, if they have to cancel the season completely. So, of course, the NHL, the leagues, and the owners especially want to complete this if at all possible. Another big hurdle that's been raised by some of the players is the fact that they're going to have to be quarantined and possibly be away from their families for an extended time, like 3 to 4 months, and obviously many of them don't want to do that. Some of them have, the fact that they're expecting babies in their family. Some of them have other issues going on that they need to be around their families, without being away for that long. So the players are likely going to be wanting to negotiate something in to be able to do that, and how that's all going to work. It's just another complication here amongst everything else that needs to get worked out. So all kinds of things that need to be sorted still lots of time. There seems to be more and more pushback about the possibility of having an early June NHL draft. So at one point that was looking like a pretty promising idea. Now it's pretty cooled down and not too much interest by the looks of things around league offices. So I guess we'll see. But either way, the NHL seems to be prepared to push back next year and cut down a lot of the breaks in order to salvage the 1920 season, if at all possible. But we're used to of hockey starting around, training camps in September, regular season in October, and having the Stanley Cup awarded, early June, followed by the draft and free agency. That might have to be completely changed and reinvented, at least for the next few years, as they get adjusted here. So we'll have to remain further updates on this situation as it continues to evolve. Now, as I mentioned, we also have several NHL prospects that have signed contracts that were announced here within the last 24 hours. So let's jump into that here, and then we're going to take a look at a few off-season NHL rumors here before we go. Now, there was one prospect out of Sweden, Matthias Michelle, who was generating a lot of interest and apparently had it narrowed down to the Vancouver Canucks and the Detroit Red Wings, and he has made a decision and settled and has signed a contract with the Detroit Red Wings. He was an undrafted player playing over in Sweden, had some pretty solid hockey results lately, put up 43 points in the SHL last year. He's a pretty smooth skating winger, good puck skills, good stick handler, seems to be a pretty solid all-around hockey player, obviously a little bit more mature, 25 years old. So if he gets a one-year deal with Detroit, it's certainly pretty low-risk move, but clearly there's been lots of good players come out of Europe, especially at a more mature age in the mid-20s that have had success. So I guess we will see here if the Steve Yzerman has found himself a gem or how this could go. But either way, Brome looks like he could be a pretty interesting prospect to keep our eye on here once NHL hockey gets back underway and once that 2020 season we were just talking about can finally get started. The Edmonton Oilers have re-signed Gaetan Haas as well to a one-year $915,000 contract. Gaetan Haas was a pretty decent depth forward for the Oilers. They have so much money invested in some of their big forwards like McDavid and Draisaitl and Nugent-Hopkins that they need to have some pretty affordable bottom six wingers to round out the roster. And Haas is a guy who can kind of go up and down, play a variety of roles, good utility player. Had a pretty solid year for the Oilers. Not going to give you a ton of points. I believe he had like 10, 11 points last year in 50-some games. So he's not, incredibly offensive, but he knows his role and he can play it well and certainly be a pretty good depth piece here for the Oilers. So not surprised to see him sign like we've seen some of the other guys on the Oilers here get short-term, cheaper contracts in recent weeks as well. And the Edmonton Oilers also picked up another prospect as well, a Swedish defenseman, Theodor Lundstrom, who's also went undrafted, another player from the SHL, $925,000 contract. We'll see how that goes. Very well could end up playing in their minor league affiliate for a little bit. See how that goes. I mean, the Oilers obviously had a pretty good emergence on their blue line with some of their younger guys this past year. We saw Darnell Nurse pick big steps, Ethan Baird, Caleb Jones. And of course, they have other guys like Broberg as well as Evan Bouchard on the way. So not sure how longer term he's going to fit into their system, but certainly another interesting guy that's pretty low risk on a shorter term contract, $925. Not a bad signing here by the Oilers. Now, the Calgary Flames have also signed a pair of prospects, including Matthias Emilio Pedersen, who's a 20-year-old prospect who's been playing college hockey for the University of Denver for the past couple seasons. The Norwegian forward was originally drafted in the 6th round back in 2018. He's 20 years old. It was close to being a point-per-game player last year at Denver, putting up 35 points in 36 games. So he's signed his entry-level 3-year deal, so he'll be leaving college hockey and joining the pro ranks. Obviously, likely joins their American Hockey League affiliate to get started and see how his development can continue. The Flames also announced another signing today, and that includes a defenseman from Sweden who was also undrafted, Nils Kinvall. Pretty offensive guy, put up 40 points in the SHL last year for HV 71. Seems to have a pretty good offensive background. He is going to be remaining playing over in Sweden for one more year. They've advised that it does have a European assignment clause, so they've assigned him back to HV 71 where he'll play in the 2020-21 season. And then he'll make the jump to North America the following year, and that is a 2-year contract that he has signed here. So certainly another interesting prospect for Calgary. Could turn out to be a decent piece in their blue line here in a couple of years' time. The Arizona Coyotes have also signed one of their prospects, Matthias Michelle, who's a left winger out of Finland. He signed his 3-year entry-level contract. He was originally drafted just last year, 2019, in the 4th round. He had a pretty solid year in Liga last year, playing in 43 games and putting up 30 points. So another interesting signing there by the Coyotes. The Pittsburgh Penguins have also signed a very interesting-looking prospect out of Europe. Radim Zohorna out of the Czech Republic has signed a 1-year contract. He is a monster of a man, 6'6", 230-some pounds. He's a really big guy, not overly offensive, at least based on his statistics from the Czech League. I mean, not a player I'm overly familiar with, but last year playing over in the Czech Republic, he put up 22 points in 46 games. But like I said, he's certainly got the size and the strength for sure, so we'll see how he can adapt to the North American style of hockey. Maybe the Penguins find themselves another winger here. They seem to have a lot of luck running out with inexperienced wingers filling in on their roster here when necessary and really jumping in and making an impact with that team. So we'll see how Zohorna fits in with Pittsburgh. If he makes the jump to the NHL, maybe he's going to play in the AHL next year. Hard to say, but he's on a 1-year contract, and certainly with that size and strength, I'd be curious to see how he can make out in a smaller ice surface in North America. And of course, one of the more interesting signings of the day, the Vancouver Canucks have signed one of their top prospects, and that's forward Nils Hoglander. Now, Hoglander was drafted in the 2nd round just last year in 2019. The Swedish forward is certainly very exciting, offensively gifted forward. Even heard comments from fellow Canuck and fellow Swede Elias Pedersen. Apparently even played a small role in the Canucks selecting him at the draft last year. Apparently he was asked for some input on the player, and he was very complimentary of his game, so that probably added a little bit of weight to what the scouts were already advising here. But Hoglander's really turned out to be a pretty interesting prospect. GM Jim Benning says he feels that he can be a top 9 forward in the short term. Long term, his ceiling is a top 6 is what they see in him, and I certainly would concur that that does seem to be a possibility based on how he's developed so far in his young hockey career. I know that's another prospect here that the Canucks are really excited about, so we will see. Not quite clear where Hoglander's going to play next year. He will likely come to the training camp whenever that is going to be held for the upcoming 2020-2021 season, as we've already discussed here. We don't know when that's going to be, but when the time comes, he very well could compete for a spot with Vancouver. With this entry-level contract, he would have the ability to continue to play in Europe if they all felt that was best for his development, but there's a lot of question marks, like I said, based on return of hockey and how the seasons go and the calendar and all those things that we've already discussed here. But either way, the good news here is a very exciting prospect, and Hoglander is under contract, and he's now officially a member of the Vancouver Canucks. Speaking with the Canucks here, there's a few articles discussing some potential plans here for the Vancouver Canucks in the offseason. Obviously, they have a lot of big decisions. They have their goaltender, Jacob Markstrom, who needs a new contract, who they've yet to be able to come to terms with. They have Tyler Toffoli, who they picked up as a rental at the NHL trade deadline, who was fitting in extremely well before hockey was paused. So we'll see see if they'd like to bring him back. It's going to cost them some money. They don't have a ton of space to do it, but they could make, cuts elsewhere. They do have other guys on the roster as well, like Chris Tanev, who's a pending UFA. Jake Virtanen's an RFA. They have lots of other things that they can make decisions here on. And obviously, I think, based on some of the articles that we're referencing in today's video, obviously there's a lot of, expectations that they very well would like to keep Toffoli, and obviously Markstrom are big parts of that. And what other cuts would they have to make, or either buyouts, trades, etc., to make it happen? In my opinion, Markstrom is absolutely imperative they keep him. He had a phenomenal year. He's been a really solid player for them the last few years, and when he was out injured, they were really showing their true colors that Thatcher Demko was not ready to take over the starting job, and they don't have anybody else in the system ready to do that either. And really, Markstrom is really, really important for them. Hopefully they can figure something out. Now, of course, based on where he's at in his career and his age, I'm sure the Canucks don't want to go too long term. But at the same time, I'm sure Markstrom, after putting in some solid time and really working on improving his game over the last number of years, he's going to be looking for a little bit of security as well. So hopefully they can kind of bridge that gap and see here. I'm sure he's probably going to also want a form of a no trade clause, so to make sure he doesn't go anywhere in the expansion draft. That's another thing a lot of players are going to be looking for in upcoming contracts. But clearly Markstrom is a marked man for them as a top priority. I think they really need to make that happen. Now, to make some cap space, they do have some options depending on what they're given for compliance buyouts or not. They're getting to the point where the Louis Eriksson contract should be a lot more tradable. He's down to the last 2 years in the deal. There's not a lot of actual real money left. And if they were to look at a buyout, might not be too bad, but clearly if they can move the contract completely off the books would be even better. But obviously another option, as I mentioned, was a compliance buyout. How that would work, as we've mentioned before, which happened after another lockout in the past, is that teams were allowed to buy players out. They still had to play them a percentage of their contract, but none of it counted against the salary cap, so it really gave them a lot more flexibility to kind of get moving forward here. So a guy like Eriksson or Brendan Sutter, if they can move one of them off the books, that'll go a long way here in order to create some space, and that's likely going to be necessary if they have any shot at signing Markstrom as well as Toffoli. Other guys like Jordy Ben, Sven Baertschi, they may have to find a way to move them off the books and creates a little bit of extra space. Like I said, obviously, and bringing back Chris Tanev is a question mark as well. Now, the Canucks also did provide some health updates today. Obviously, a lot of their injured players have been rehabbing. Guys like Chris Tanev and Jacob Markstrom would be good to go should the season resume. There's been some positive news on Michael Furlan. They feel that report from his agent indicates that he very well could be able to play if they can do the summertime playoffs. So that's certainly, some positive news. There was a lot of concern about his future given the concussion history. So I guess we'll see how the Canucks proceed here, but ultimately they have a lot of tough decisions to make this summer. They might not be able to make it all happen unless they can find trades for guys like Sutter and Eriksson and get those contracts off the books in order to retain their other core members of the team like Markstrom and Toffoli. So let me know what your thoughts are. Who stays and who goes to Vancouver once we finally hit the offseason? Now, the other team I want to touch on today was the Detroit Red Wings, and there's an article in the Detroit Free Press discussing their goaltending options. Clearly, it looks as though Jimmy Howard likely doesn't return. They have Jonathan Bernier under contract, and he's not really a starting goaltender at this point in his career either. And they reference in this article numerous goaltenders in the UFA market that Steve Yzerman could look to. Certain players like Braden Holtby, Robin Leonard, options for sure, but might be too expensive, and they may not want to go to a rebuilding Red Wing team at this stage in their career. There's several guys that are kind of career backups as well on the market, but one player who's had a bit of a time as a starter and a backup is looking for more opportunity that I think would be a great fit for Detroit might be Calgary Flames backup goaltender Cam Talbot, who's certainly bounced back and played much better this past year and is in a position where he's looking for more opportunity to be a starter, and he may not get that in Calgary, but a team like Detroit could certainly offer him a big-time opportunity. He might only do a short-term contract perhaps to show he can still be a starter, to look for future opportunity. I'm not sure how long he'd want to be in Detroit, but he still has a fair bit of game left in him, I do believe. So I think Talbot myself would be a great fit in Detroit, and I do agree with the article in the Detroit Free Press referencing the fact that Steve Yzerman, one of his top priorities is to find himself a starting goaltender once the offseason kicks in, because Jimmy Howard's not the answer, and Jonathan Bernier, even though he's still under contract for a little while longer, isn't really the answer either. If they had a combo of Talbot and Bernier, might be a little bit more feasible to work them together in a 1A, 1B situation, see if Talbot can regain his form he had before as a starting goaltender when he's had the opportunity in the past. So let me know down in the comments, Who do you think would be the prime target for the Red Wings to target here as a starting goaltender once the UFA market finally opens up, whenever that may be here? So let me know your thoughts and opinions and everything discussed here today down in the comments, and we can discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.